From Providence, Rhode Island, welcome to the MCU Diaries, a podcast dedicated to the storycraft and meaning behind Marvel. No homework, no timelines, just story. Now, let's break down Earth's mightiest heroes. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MCU Diaries. My name is Blake. Today, we're talking about Robert Downey Jr. being cast as Dr. Doom in the upcoming Doomsday and Secret Wars films. Full transparency here, I was out on this casting at first. But over time, I got a chance to think about it in terms of natural storytelling. When I did a recent rewatch of Ultron, it finally clicked for me. Once that happened, I think that not only is Doomsday going to be good, in addition to Secret Wars, but I think that they will be the best films Marvel has produced yet. Yes, even better than Infinity War or Endgame. Yes, even better than my favorite MCU film, Civil War. This episode is an attempt to break down why. If you want the written version of this essay, it's on maryandblake.com. If you want the visual cut with receipts on screen, that's on YouTube. And if you want the deeper lab notes, tools you can steal and use on anything, those live on. Join the nerdclan.com. All right, let's get into it. I get why people call RDJ as Dr. Doom stunt casting. Marvel's been under pressure. The multiverse era has had highs and wobbles, so the simplest story is they're bringing the band back together because they need a win. Sure, that might be part of the business math, but the craft math is what fascinates me, because RDJ isn't just an actor in this franchise, he's a meaning. For over a decade, that face has signaled the fix. The guy who builds the solution, engineers safety, refuses to be powerless. So when Marvel puts that face on the antagonist, it lands differently. It turns the MCU's founding symbol into the saga's final moral argument. Here's my thesis. Clean. Downey as Dr. Doom works if Doom is the final form of Tony Stark's core flaw, control is comfort, pushed past the point where mercy or consent matters. Done right, Doom won't feel imported. He'll feel inevitable. And the easiest way to see why is a mirror villain lens. A mirror villain isn't the opposite. He's the hero's logic with the limits removed. Same wound, same desire, same method, different line in the sand. If you want a pattern tool you can use on anything you watch, track the mirror in 4 places: the wound, the desire, the method, and the cost. In this case, helplessness, certainty, systems, and who bleeds. Tony Stark and Victor Von Doom live close together in story space because they're built from similar material. Both are genius-level fixers. Both treat fear like an equation. Both believe the world is safer when someone competent is holding the wheel. The separation line isn't intelligence, it's restraint. It's whether other people get a vote. Tony spends the saga learning that lesson the hard way. Doom is the character who refuses to learn it at all. Now, there's a variant question people keep circling. Is Doom literally Tony from another universe, or is Doom Victor Von Doom full stop, and the face match is the trap? Here's the craft answer. It almost doesn't matter. Marvel doesn't actually need Doom to be Tony to get the emotional effect. Marvel only needs the audience and the heroes to read him as Tony for a few seconds. Oh, that's the power of a symbol. RDJ's face doesn't just mean Iron Man. It means solutions, systems, the fix. So whether the story explains the resemblance with multiverse logic, a mask, a trick, a reveal, whatever, the function stays the same. Marvel is weaponizing our muscle memory. New mask, same task. Tony's task was always to make the nightmare impossible. Doom's task is the same. The difference is, Tony eventually finds a limit, and Doom never does. All right, let's go on screen. First, the Avengers is where Tony's fear stops being personal and becomes planetary. There's a quiet pivot in that first movie where the scale changes. It's not protect the room anymore. It's protect the planet. Once the threat goes cosmic, safety stops sounding like something you hope for. It starts sounding like something you should be able to guarantee. And Tony, because he's Tony, starts craving guarantees. Second, Age of Ultron is the confession. People argue that movie like it's an uneven sequel, and I'm not here to litigate the whole thing. I'm here for the receipts that matter, because those receipts are basically the MCU writing its own villain blueprint. Start with Tony's nightmare. Avengers dead, shield broken, Earth opened up. The core feeling isn't, I might die. It's, I was responsible, and I still couldn't stop it. That's the wound, helplessness. Then Tony does what he always does with helplessness. He tries to engineer it out of existence. Peace in our time. A suit of armor around the world. He's not pitching a gadget. He's pitching a worldview. He's converting fear into a governing philosophy. He's chasing a permanent guarantee, an outcome so locked down the nightmare can't happen. In his book, Story, Robert McKee says, pressure is essential. Choices made when nothing is at risk mean little. Tony's pressure here isn't a villain holding a gun to his head. It's the vision of failure. And under that pressure, he chooses control. Watch the value shift happening under the surface. Safety becomes control. Once control becomes the good value, you're already on Doom's runway. Third, the farm scene with Fury is the slope. Tony talks like a man who has already decided the future, and now he's looking for permission to feel righteous about it. Fear becomes evidence. Burden becomes authority. The nightmare becomes a mandate. And Ultron becomes the immediate consequence of that moral move. You don't build perfect protection. You build a new catastrophe. Fourth, Civil War is where the subtext says the quiet part out loud. This is why that Tony and Steve argument matters so much. It isn't just another fight. It's Tony revealing the emotional wiring underneath the Accords debate. He walks in doing charm. The here's something from my dad's archives move. Classic Tony. Controlling the temperature in the room. Oh. But Steve asks one question. Where's Pepper? And Tony's mask slips. He admits they're on a break, and then he spills the chain of and then, like he can't stop himself. And he says the line that gives the whole saga away. The truth is, I don't want to stop. That's not arrogance, that's compulsion. Building systems is how he self-medicates fear. Stopping means sitting inside helplessness. And then watch what he does with that confession. He reframes the Accords as compromise, like paperwork can be the restraint he doesn't trust himself to hold. He's outsourcing restraint because he doesn't trust himself to have it. And then we get the Wanda beat. Tony calls it protection. Steve calls it internment. Tony has walked so far down his own fear logic that confinement reads as care. Steve is wired to hear coercion in the same sentence. Their argument isn't about decor. It's about consent. Here's a tool that separates heroic leadership from antagonist doctrine, and it's simple and ruthless. Does the solution still require consent? The moment the answer becomes no, you've crossed the line from hero to antagonist. Protection becomes confinement. Compromise becomes control. Temporary starts sounding permanent. Now zoom out. Endgame resolves Tony, but it leaves the universe hungry for certainty. Tony's arc ends beautifully because he finally makes a choice that isn't control disguised as protection. He accepts cost. He chooses something with no guarantee attached. but the universe he leaves behind still wants guarantees. And the multiverse era pours gasoline on that craving. Once reality becomes editable, variants, split timelines, consequences that can be negotiated, you can feel the pressure it puts on stakes. When consequence starts to leak, order starts sounding like relief. That's Doom's home field. Here's another stakes tool to carry forward, the scar test. What mark remains after the scene ends? If nothing carries forward, behavior, relationship, identity, loss, stakes start to evaporate. And the multiverse, by design, tempts stories into making scars reversible. Doom is the character who weaponizes that temptation. He offers certainty as seduction. Now let's talk about why RDJ matters specifically. That face is the MCU's most powerful piece of shorthand. It means solutions, systems, the promise that fear can be engineered into safety. So when Marvel casts him as Doom, they aren't only casting a villain, they're flipping a symbol. They're taking the franchise's original fix-it energy and asking what it becomes when it hardens into doctrine. In his book, The Anatomy of Story, John Truby gives us the clean frame for what's happening under the hood. From the beginning of the story, the hero has one or more great weaknesses that are holding him back. Tony's weakness is the craving for certainty. Control as comfort. Doom is what that weakness looks like when it stops being a struggle and becomes a belief system. Okay, let's land this plane. A saga ends best when the villain is the hero's worldview, stripped of empathy and restraint. Tony's worldview grows, it learns, it eventually pays the bill. Doom is what that worldview looks like when it never learns, when peace in our time becomes doctrine, when armor around the world becomes policy, when protection becomes the justification for a cage. That's a villain that doesn't feel random, he feels authored. This casting has one job, make Doomsday feel inevitable. If Doom is written as seduction, certainty, relief, the promise the nightmare can't happen, then RDJ as Doom stops feeling like a headline and starts feeling like the saga closing a loop. Because Marvel already wrote the fork in the road. They wrote it the day Tony confessed he couldn't stop. They wrote it the day he called Wanda's confinement protection. They wrote it the day Steve heard the subtext and refused to call a cage care. And if the MCU is about to pivot into a new era after this chapter closes, this is exactly how you end one mythology before you start another. You face the founding flaw, fully weaponized, and you force the heroes and the audience to decide what kind of safety they actually want. Next time you watch anything, Marvel or not, track the pressure. Pressure forces choice. Choice reveals character. And character, not spectacle, is what makes a story stick.
All right, that is the MCU Diaries entry for today. If you want the written version of this episode, you can find it on MarionBlakeMedia.com. If you want the deeper cut, however, the behind-the-scenes breakdown, well, you can join the Nerd Clan at jointhenerdclan.com. Of course, subscribe to wherever you're listening to this episode. Follow the show on any of the major social media platforms. Leave a rating where you're listening to this, and tell us next time what you think the pattern is.